Welcome. You found the Wiccan and the pastor, and this is the Wiccan, and she is Thea Bristlebroom, and she's going to be doing something very interesting. Now, I should say who I am. I'm Ken Philpott. I'm the pastor of Miller Avenue Baptist Church in Mill Valley, California, and I think it's program number 7 in our series. You can find other previous programs, but we got something very special. Thea is going to be describing the altar. Thea.
So what I have here is sort of my portable altar box, and it originally was a tinder box for having next to your fireplace. It has a cool little lid. This is not part of our equipment. It's just a cool box. I think of it as luggage for carrying all of the things in it that I need. But what I'm going to be doing is laying out an altar for people to see. And one of the first things we do, because we can be doing this altar in any situation on any table, is we'd like to try and make it be special and sacred. So we carry along a little portable kit like this when we go out to do public rituals or ritual in an outdoor space. We'll often bring along a table so that we can put our altar up. And specifically, ordinarily, the rule is you wouldn't touch a witch's personal jewelry or their altar tools without asking for permission first. But I am hereby granting you permission to look at and pick up and talk about. This is my teaching set of tools, so it's not prohibited that you touch them. So one of the things that you'll find is that every witch sets up their altar differently, but there will be some commonalities. So one of the first things is I have a image or representation of the goddess and the god. Okay, so let me put those out here. This is a Venus of Wildendorf candle, which I've never burned, but pagans will often recognize the Venus of Wildendorf as one of the original or oldest forms of a divine female that we think was a goddess or was worshipped like a goddess. And then for my representation of the god, I have a small little box that is carved with, it's hard to see, but it's a deer, an antlered deer. And so that's one of our images for the horned god, is a deer, a stag specifically. And then we're also going to have a pentagram, which is, as I think I might have mentioned before, the 5 elements: air, earth, fire, and water, and spirit.
Air, earth, fire, water, and spirit. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so that'll be on most witches' altars at some place. Let's see what else. I have a candle that I do actually burn, although I won't be burning this one. Here we go. And I don't know if you can see it, but this particular candle holder has kind of scrolls on it. These are old symbols that are found in petroglyphs and all over Celtic Europe, sort of a 3-armed spiral kind of a thing. We don't know what it meant to them, but we like it, so we go ahead and do that. In addition to that, we have some things that we associate with creating I'm forgetting what the word for it is, consecrated water, which might be akin to, in the Catholic Church, you have holy water. Mm-hmm. It's not a one-to-one representation. I'm not claiming that, but it's a common thing in religions to have some kind of special way of consecrating objects and people. And so salt and water is often the way we do that. I didn't bring any water out, but this is the dish that I put the water in, and then this is the dish that I keep the salt in. I'll put that here. We also have an indication of air, which ordinarily it would be an incense. But in some cases, if you have covenanters who are allergic to incense or whatnot, we might have a bell. I'm going to ring that real quick. I love that bell. So that's for air. And then obviously for fire we would have the candle. And when we start to make sacred space, I'm not going to show you all the preparations, but one of the things that we do is we will clean the area. So symbolically clean, you'd want a broom. So I have a little portable broom in my altar. And that's
the witch. That's not the witch's broom.
No, well, it is actually, but it's a mini one. So there's that.
Okay.
And then let me see what else I have in here. Not part of this setup normally is what we put in the quarters. So in the 4 directions. Now
you talk the quarters. You mean north, south, east, west?
Right. So in the 4 quarters, outside in the boundaries of the circle would be small tables, and they would each have a candle. And in my portable altar set, I have colored candles. These are really kind of beat up, but
now what are the things that are put, Thea? Oh, you're getting that out now?
I'm getting it out now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're color coded, and they're kind of beat up, but they were gifts, so they're sentimental value to me. So there's these little star candle holders. These would go in the quarters, so I'm not going to put them out right now. And then oftentimes a witch will work with different spirit helpers, spirit guides, totem animals, the various terms for these things. And these are not necessarily deities, but they're spirit energies that they may be working with. And I have one that I work with. Somebody gifted me a candle again. I don't know why they're always candles, but it's a, can you tell what that is?
Looks like a dog. Hyena?
It's a coyote.
That's a coyote, okay.
There's a story there, but we're not going to go into that right now. So on my altar, I might also have something that represents a deity. And then a very important part of any ritual is cakes and wine. So I would have representation, I might have a bottle of wine, or I might have, beer or something. And then I'd have something to drink it out of. And often there would be a plate with cakes also.
A plate with?
Food of some kind, cakes or slices of bread.
Now this is in the circle.
Right. So this would be in the center of the circle.
Center of the circle, okay.
And or possibly up against, possibly up against one side of the circle, if you needed the center of the circle for your ritual. And then on every altar I do, in all of my teachers, we put flowers. So that's something that you would see. Additionally, you're going to have people's magical tools that are personal to them. And so this is my ahame, and this is the one thing that I would ask that you don't touch. But it would be also placed on the altar as well. And then we may prepare ourselves, too, when we're going into circle. So we might put on oil on various parts of our body. And I have some assortment of oils that I use. And then we also might wear necklaces. It's very common for us to have a necklace that doesn't have a clasp. Pardon me, can't speak today. So it's an unbroken circle, which also sort of represents the circle that we're in. And in some traditions, it can have other meanings, like some people think of it as the circle of life. Other people think of it as a symbolic womb of the goddess, that we're all her hidden children and we come from her womb. So these would be something that would be worn by the participants. And I'm not going to go ahead and put that on right now. But in my own tradition, we also would have some cords that would have some significance. And we would either wear them or they'd be on the altar. And they would be indications of our degree status, so that other people would know, for instance, who's an elder, who's a second, who's a first, that sort of thing. So when you're looking at this setup, you're probably wondering, how are these things all used? So personal preparation is really important when you're going into sacred space. If you're going to church, you get washed, right? And you put on your good Sunday clothes, right?
Used to be.
Your Sunday finest. We also do the same thing. We prep. We will often take a bath. We will prepare the space that we're in by sweeping and maybe also burning an incense. Now, I didn't want to burn incense, but what I brought was an oil that's a frankincense oil. So frankincense is an incense you would often find in Catholic churches, and I'm assuming in other churches, but it also has purifying effects. So that's not something I would put on me, but it's something that I might, in place of burning an incense stick, if someone's sensitive to incense, I might just use an essential oil. So those are some options. After I've prepared myself and my space, I'm going to lay out the altar and get ready for my work. If my spell involves, for instance, blessing seeds so that I can go plant them and have a harvest, I will have the seed packet nearby. If I'm going to be doing something like a healing, I might have a picture of the person who wants our energy to send to them to help them heal. Various other things might be on the altar. Would you like to ask some questions?
Okay, now the circle is about, what is the diameter? 9?
Well, there's a instruction that is a little bit unclear sometimes about a circle having a 9-foot diameter, which is a really small circle when you think about it.
Yeah, it is.
And we're not entirely sure that that's maybe a minimum standard, and they can be bigger if they need to be. But I can assure you, you can't get 13 people armed with sharp, pokey things and an altar in a circle that's only 9 feet in diameter. That's crunching on a lot of stuff.
Now, but there's 2 outer circles, 1 foot each, so it actually ends up to be 11 feet.
You've been talking or reading up on Gerald Gardner's work, haven't you?
That's Gerald Gardner's way he does
He
stuff.
had a museum, and he had on the floor of the museum a circle exactly that way. We're not sure exactly where that came from. We cast circles differently, so I don't want to make too much of a particular statement about that, but there are several different ways of casting a circle. My way is it's a flexible barrier, if you will, a flexible boundary, and it always includes the bathroom. Wherever the bathroom is, it always includes the bathroom.
That's a good idea.
But it's permeable in that we can go in and out, but every time you go in and out across that boundary, it sort of weakens it. So what we try to do is bring everything we need into the circle and draw the circle and close it, and then do our business, and not open it again until we have to leave. So,
Now,
any other questions?
Yeah, so Thea, can you kind of describe what you're doing now? Okay, I'm imagining you have your coven, right? Or is this something you do alone?
It's both. Yeah.
You can do it alone, or you can have your coven.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you lay this out, and then you're going to have different things you're doing for each time.
Right. Sometimes it's just a Sabbath, and we're there to worship and what we call turn the wheel of the year.
Turn the what?
Turn the wheel of the year.
Okay.
So if you look at like a calendar face, but it's the year, the Sabbaths are the quarter days and the cross quarter days for a total of 8. And the cycle of change is always going. You know, it never stops. There's never a point of stillness, right? But there are points of equilibrium and balance, and those would be the equinoxes, where the night and day are balanced perfectly. The other ones would be the solstices, the winter and summer solstice. And then approximately 45 days after each of those are the cross quarter days.
Okay. Yeah, I just got through reading about that in my own book.
And one of the things that we do if we don't have a specific working that we're doing and it's a Sabbath is we're just basically honoring the gods, getting in touch with them, listening if they have any messages for us. And
Okay, now.
And I'll get to that. and asking for their help in our lives. The other thing we do is, like I said, turn the wheel of the year. We put energy into that, the tides, as you will, of the earth turning and the moon turning and the sun turning, all of that. We know scientifically that they don't need our help, but spiritually we want to get ourselves in tune with those things as well.
One of the main words that comes up in this is the word magic with the K. Magic with the K. It's thoroughly magical. Things are invested with magic, with energy, with power. That's how I am understanding this. And by doing this, you're controlling power and energy. Was that a fair description at all?
On some levels, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And now, how long do the rituals usually last?
That depends quite a bit on what work we're doing. Let's say we have a covenor who's ill and is, actively dying, and we know for a fact that they don't want to die just yet, and they've asked for healing. We will work ourselves into a state of exhaustion to raise energy for them. But we will also ask, so that's energy raised from our personal beings, but we will also ask the gods for help and other spirits that we work with, that they might lend their energies to this goal. And then we would gather all that up and send it to our friend.
Okay. How do you send it?
Well, it's different for different folks, but in general, the whole coven would be focusing on, for instance, a picture that we might have of the person, or some object of theirs that they have asked us to use. And we might focus the energy on that with the idea that it's linked to them. Okay. So they'll be able to receive it.
Okay. Now I've got something that I hope that you're not going to get mad at me, Thea.
I won't. You go right ahead.
And you can dismiss me if you want to, but it's the issue of skyclad. Skyclad. Okay. Now tell us what skyclad is.
Well, it's a word that we borrowed from the Jains, and
from the what?
From the Jains, Jain. Jain.
A religious teaching.
A religious, yeah. The word comes from them, and I've heard other people say it also comes from Hinduism, but I'm not positive about that.
I think Jains, yeah.
So skyclad means that we would be naked in our rites, and it's not seen as something sexual, but rather sort of the opposite of that. If we're all equal, we're all equally naked, there is no indication of rank or status or class or somebody's got fancy jewelry and somebody's got holes in their clothing. There's none of that. It equals us out.
I was when I was reading about this, it said that that clothing distorted or slowed down or prevented energy flow.
That's one theory. First, let me make it clear that not everybody practices skyclad, and it's certainly not acceptable or appropriate in places where you might become hypothermic or it might endanger your health. But in the privacy of one's own home, it's certainly something that a lot of folks do, and the energy flow from your body is one theory about how we raise our energy. One of the early teachings that you learn as a student, even before you're initiated, is how to move energy, how to sense energy, how to send energy back and forth. It's an important part of being able to either see or perceive energetic forces so that you can work with them. It's an important thing to learn. There are some folks that, regrettably, they never quite seem to pick up on it. It's some people can't. Some people don't. I don't know why.
Yeah. Now, I'd like to, in the 9 minutes we've got left,
okay.
Thea, it just suddenly occurred to me that, okay, what is a Christian worship situation? We are aware from Scripture, but also from history, that the Christians had no accoutrements. It had no symbolic anything. That was a slowly developing situation, and they would meet with nothing. They would meet not even in any organized building that was called a church. You know, a church, the word means ekklesia in the Greek. And this is a little counterpart. I never thought about doing this, but it just came to me, Thea. The ekklesia, ek means out. Klesia, you just meet out. You're the called out ones. The called out ones. That's what the word church was. The idea that it's a building, Miller Avenue Church. It really just describes the people. It's not, it's not a building. That came much later. But it's an inaccuracy, an historical inaccuracy, unbiblical inaccuracy. But there's no magic involved in it. But it crept into the church.
I would dispute the no magic statement. I think anytime, well, to quote the Bible, anytime 3 or more of you are gathered in my name, there I am, right?
Yeah.
So there's magic in the people gathering to worship.
But that's a different kind of thing.
Okay.
It means the presence of God is there with you. It's not something that is really experienced or sensed, that sort of thing. But in the history of church, the way things kind of developed was that baptism, water baptism, became something that washed away sin.
Rather than making you back to your original state of purity that you might have entered this world in, Christians see that there's original sin as well as the sins that you commit while you're living your life. And baptism washes away both of those?
Well, okay. Now, Thea, I'm so glad you brought this up. Original sin is a doctrine that developed later on in the history of the church. It's not a biblical idea. That we inherit the sin of Adam and Eve. We enter into a world that has been radically changed through the presence of evil. And infant baptism became a thing that supposedly washed away original sin. And that participation in the Mass washed away ongoing sin. Not a biblical concept.
Interesting.
But that's a magical concept that developed as Christianity grew, and it, early on there was no Bible. People didn't have Bibles. A rare situation where you had a copy of a biblical. If you had a copy of the Gospel of John or a letter of Peter or John, this was an incredible thing. And so there was all these long centuries, and sections of Christianity began to become magical. Not too unlike this. I was struck by that. Not true unlike this. Elements of that kind of magic did come into the church. When I say church, into the body of believers. And you only need 2. You got 2 together, you got church. You got 3, that's church. You got 1,000, that's church. See, that's the thing. Not a magical understanding at all. But so then you had holy water. It was, if it got blessed, then if that was used, wow, it achieved magic.
People became superstitious about things like holy water and the wafers for communion and all of these things. And what I'm hearing you say is they're not inherently magical.
No. The idea that when you take the bread, it becomes the body of Christ when you take it, or if you take the cup and you drink it, it becomes the blood of Jesus. In the Reformation, I think it was Martin Luther who said, well, it doesn't become, the elements don't become the body and blood, but it's in it. The more thoroughgoing Protestants, people like myself, Baptists are the earliest of the Protestants, and by the way, the word baptized came from people would be rebaptized. They said that infant baptism meant nothing, and they would be baptized. They were known as Anabaptists, rebaptizers. The Anna dropped off, except in some places in Germany. So so it was not viewed as magical. Baptism meant was, I am doing this because now I trust in Jesus. This is a outward sign, and that's what was practiced in those days.
It's an interesting thing. You're deliberately drawing a line and saying there is no magic on this side of this line, and I'm not offended by that statement, but I don't believe that. Okay. And so I would push back and say that magic is everywhere, because magic is essentially, from my viewpoint, that which is connecting all of us. Things that exist in this world, people, animals, everything that exists in the matter, the world of form, is connected, and that's what we believe through the element of spirit. And so therefore, if there's magic in one part of the world, there's magic everywhere.
And this would be a fundamental difference between us.
Yes, it would be.
But anyway, magic entered into the church in all kinds of strange forms. It still exists. That's why the word Protestant is used. We're protest. I'm protesting this that's been handed down for 1,000 years in the Dark Ages, and of course persists today. I have good friends that are Roman Catholics. Can be genuine Christians. If you're a Baptist, doesn't mean you're a born again Christian. If you're a Presbyterian, doesn't mean you're that. If you're Catholic, doesn't mean that. But there's the magical elements very, very much crept in to the Christian church, and so salvation was something that you participated in instead of being a born again conversion experience strictly by the power of God, independent of anything. No magic involved. But you could say, Thea, that the new birth, conversion, is at least miraculous, and if you want to call it magical, the magic of the Holy Spirit, I wouldn't protest too much.
Well, I'm going to end on my favorite quote: "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." Arthur C. Clarke.
Okay, Thea, well, here we have, I appreciate you lugging this down here to the studio and showing this. Something that I've never seen before. I've read of it, but this is the first time, and I appreciate
you're very welcome.
You doing this, Thea, a tremendous thing. So this is the world we live in, and there are things that are inexplicable and
mysterious,
hard to always grasp.
Yep.
Anyway, Thea, thank you for this. We got some more programs coming up. We're going to do this again, come back to the studios, and until the next Wiccan and the Pastor program, we say so long.